Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your kind attention, please? We will be starting now. Madam, we have your permission. Thank you. On behalf of the Embassy of Pakistan, Washington, D.C., we warmly welcome the National Defense University delegation from Pakistan and all our distinguished guests who are here with us from the U.S. side as well. To begin proceedings today, I would first of all request Her Excellency Ambassador Sherry Rehman to kindly come and share a few words with us.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Friends and delegates and distinguished members of the National Defense University of all the countries represented here, principally Pakistan and the United States. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all to the Pakistan Embassy, and I hope that you've had a fruitful, week or 5 days. I hear that you've all solved all the problems that and challenges that bedevil our relationship, so I can just dispense with my speech and lead you straight into a fun dinner, but I'm told there's no such thing as a free dinner or supper at the Pakistan Embassy, so I'm going to have to stand between the way of your dinner for just a little while and tell you that while it's a great pleasure to host you, we particularly welcome you because your visit here, the Pakistani members and others, comes at a crossroads in the 65-year-old relationships and arguably one of the most critical times in our relationship. So another good reason to welcome you and hope that you have brought your expertise and the value of your experience and good advice to consulting with each other in constructing what I call reconfiguring the bilateral relationship between the two countries, and what to the diplomatic community has become a fairly challenging choreography. And I look at my friends from the State Department as I say this, who have been really literally at each other's sides, at my sides if I may say so, over these last 3 months in trying to repair our ties so that we make them more transparent, more sustainable, and with realistic expectations from both sides. Principally, I want to say that I don't want to go into the incidents that have strained the relationship and brought us to this decisive moment, because everybody knows them, especially yourselves, better than anyone. Sovereignty is one of the key concepts that has been raised in every discussion from Pakistan's side, and it would behoove me to repeat that in any singular or signature dialogue that we engage in. Assaults on Pakistan's sovereignty are very hard to sustain, and I do think that they've had a major impact on public opinion in Pakistan, which, as you know, in a democracy is critical. You also know that Pakistan's parliament has just concluded an exhaustive review of the Pak-US relationship, which we believe is among the most important in the world to us. And on the Pakistani side, we feel we are very invested in maintaining and strengthening. At the same time, we want this relationship to be grounded in realistic expectations, as I've said earlier, respect for each other's sovereignty, appreciation of each other's legitimate security interests, and the profound understanding of each other's red lines. I say profound because that's what it's going to have to take to understand them. Similarly, both sides need to be aware of each other's limitations and constraints, because I think some of those are what perhaps take us into the lower ebbs of our great relationship. Pakistan's parliament, ladies and gentlemen, has also made history by taking charge of spelling out Pakistan's concerns, priorities, and once again our red lines. We hope to use this framework as a stable foundation for a healthier, more sustainable, and mutually cooperative relationship with the United States. And I don't say this just as a cliche. I think it's important to use the legitimacy of public consent and the power of a true democracy to drive a relationship that needs to build bridges and to drain the relationship of the trust deficit that has loomed very long, too long over this relationship. And I believe we can do that by using our strength, which is the power of democratic consent on both sides. The exchange of delegations, such as the one we have the honor of hosting this evening, are part of such a relationship and such an exercise. I'm sure that the delegation has had the opportunity to interact with each other, and I'm told that ideas and views that would filter out of this discussion will hopefully bring more stability to all counterparts and partners as we return to our stations to discuss this vital relationship, which I believe can anchor stability in the region. I will, of course, remind you that for any relationship to be sustainable, which we would like this one to be, both countries must treat each other as partners and respect their core interests. Such interactions between the militaries, I'm told, were suspended in 1990, and policymakers now publicly realize and recognize the price that the bilateral relationship paid for this hiatus. Your presence here is a good sign of the vitality of our new relationship, renewed relationship, and I hope that it can become more robust as the years go by. Again, as we meet here this evening, I am reminded of the shadow of an 18-hour-long set of attacks in Afghanistan, which I'm sure you've discussed, threadbare, including Kabul, hanging over our region. 12 Afghans have lost their lives in these attacks, and I bring it to your attention because it has been informing our discourse and our work over the last 2 days. I take this opportunity to reiterate our condemnation of these attacks and express our sympathy and solidarity with the people and government of Pakistan on the loss of life. President Zardari has also strongly condemned these recent terrorist attacks, and I would like to share with you the views of the Defense Coordination Committee, which finished its deliberations this evening. They have also strongly condemned these attacks, as has the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, who has spoken with Afghan Foreign Minister Zalmay Rasool to convey all above messages. President Karzai's considered comments that the attacks point out the need for better intelligence by both NATO and Afghan forces have been seen as important in Pakistan. Secretary Clinton has also reiterated the need for robust action while underscoring the shared responsibility by the US and ISAF, by Afghanistan and by Pakistan to confront and defeat terrorists and violent extremists. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to underscore clearly that there is no doubt that we are all doing that and engaged almost at all times of our awake lives to do that. I just saw in the Washington Post this morning that more than 1,900 US soldiers have lost their lives in Afghanistan. It is a moment for pause. Thousands of Afghans have also paid a similarly high price, and it makes me wonder what we're doing in so many, in the region, especially after our disaster in Siachen, where we lost many amount of soldiers who were martyred at the highest battlefield in the world. And I have to pay homage to our own soldiers today and civilians who have paid the highest price fighting the same terrorists and extremists in partnership with the United States. And I have to say that today we are indeed a changed country. We have lost 37,000 citizens to terrorists. And there was one suicide bombing in Pakistan before 2001. Hard to believe, but not so long ago. There have been more than 300 since then. Our armed forces, police, and other law enforcement agencies have lost more than 5,000 officials. The roster of our military dead includes every rank from 3-star generals down to the ordinary private. 1 in every 10 military casualties is an officer, but every life is as valuable as any other. Terrorists have targeted our offices, hospitals, schools, colleges, bazaars, mosques, weddings, and funerals. Our streets are a maze of security barriers, which was certainly not the case 10 years ago. We have lost $78 billion in economic costs. And let us not remember that we have lost one of the greatest leaders in Pakistani history, Shaheed Mohtarama Benazir Bhutto, to a terrorist assassination. And I'd like to remind everybody that it was an IED explosion. I was there at the time. which is a segue into my saying that IED attacks are something that we are very, very clearly focused on because we are largely the victims of those attacks in the region. So clearly, the people of Pakistan do not need any more tutoring about the virtues of fighting terrorism. We do this every day of our lives, and I appreciate those of you in the audience who have understood that we have stood up for our principles and paid for it with our blood. I take this opportunity to say that we remain undeterred in our resolve to defeat all terrorists, and as far as Afghanistan is concerned, it has been again the subject of much discussion over the last 2 days. We need to remind everybody in Pakistan and the United States and all those stakeholders who seek not just stability but peace in the Central, West and South Asian region, that Pakistan supports an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned reconciliation process, and we are prepared to assist in that effort in whatever way our brothers, Afghan brothers and sisters want. By the way, it's usually only Afghan brothers, and I have to add the sisters in every equation. This is not a weightless statement, as we have made an important shift in our Afghan policy from the 1990s. While we have vital stakes in Afghan stability, we are very clear that Pakistan has no interest in playing favorites in Afghanistan, nor can we treat it as our strategic backyard. I don't want to go into details for how we must create a calibrated opening for dialogue, but that we must, with clear stakes in the reconciliation process and the broad tent that we seek for women and minorities. There can be no military solutions to any conflict in the region. That is something, again, we all repeat at every forum, and Afghanistan is no exception. Other than the Afghans, the Pakistanis have paid the highest price for instability and conflict in Afghanistan. We therefore find muted and not so muted aspersions that Pakistan is somehow responsible for the situation in Afghanistan extremely misplaced. These also fly in the face of reason. Let me say unequivocally that Pakistan condemns every terrorist attack in no uncertain terms and pays a heavy price in the mission to deny terrorists any quarter on our side of the border. We do hope that you can match our commitment. We know you certainly match and overmatch our capacity. Pakistan now is in the process of turning a new page in Pak-US relations, in which the representatives of the Pakistani people are the drivers of this equation. This is the first time that an average Pakistani is getting a stake or a say in settling this vital relationship. And I also hope that this will take us on a path to progress and, as I say, some predictability and stability in our relationship. This is also the first time that any democratic government, or any government indeed, has been able to build a crucial consensus in Parliament on key national security interests. This will help us to ground the relationship in not just the soil of public consent, but also be able to face naysayers in any of our political equations. And as you know, democracies are noisy. The majority of Pakistanis have clearly spoken on the kind of relationship they want with the United States, and we hope to make that possible and more than possible in the near future. I also just want to conclude that I sincerely hope we can build bridges that bring prosperity to both our peoples. There is much an average American can identify with in an average Pakistani. A never say die attitude, tremendous enterprise, a rugged individualism, boundless capacity to work hard and without complaint. Embassy staff and colleagues, please note, hard and without complaint, and a constant quest to do better, especially when faced with challenges. Thank you once again, and welcome to Washington, D.C. And for those of you who live here, well, I think that Washington is even balmier than Islamabad at this time of year, which is a wonderful shock because I just got here 2 days ago and had to shed my warm clothes. I hope we see this kind of weather the whole year, and I hope this symbolizes our relationship as well. So thank you once again.